Hi, I'm Olivia, and today I've got a wonderful guest that I'm really excited to share with you today. Her name is April Graham. She is an herbalist. I have followed April for a good amount of time now, and I was ecstatic when she replied to me and agreed to be interviewed by me. April specifically is somebody who I've admired and looked up to as an herbalist, a teacher, and just as a person in general. The way that she approaches teaching herbalism is very different than what you see commonly throughout the rest of the internet. Before I spoil anything, just go ahead and listen to the interview. All of her links down below if you want to find her and her shop. I'm just going to get right into the interview with April. I hope that you enjoy.
I'll probably let you know that I have a concussion.
Oh
And
God, are you
yeah,
okay?
yeah, I mean, it just is my reality right now. About a week or so ago, I don't know, I can't remember things. I I fell over the shortest fence in the world and I hit my head on like a pile of like farming T-posts, which are like big things that put fencing up, you know?
Oh,
And so that's my reality right now. I'm just kind of like you know, I'll forget a word here and there, but I'm pretty good. I don't know if you've watched my YouTube videos. Like, I make fun of myself all the time. So, like, I'll roll with it. Like, it'll be
okay,
all right.
cool.
Just like,
Sweet. Yeah, and like I can always like help it along with editing. It's totally fine. I mean, I definitely just do that on a daily without a concussion, so it's
yeah.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, yeah, again, thanks for doing this. I'm just like really excited. I've watched your YouTube channel and I've followed you on Instagram for a good amount of time now. So the fact that I get to have you all to myself and ask you questions is kind of cool. We're just gonna blow through these questions. We'll see where we get, okay?
All right. Yeah.
All right, so the first question I have for you is what started your journey into herbal practice? I did read a little bit of your book already, so that kind of explains it. But if you want to add anything or let anybody know here.
Well, I grew up in it. So for me, there wasn't really a start so much as it just was. And although I will say that, like, I don't know that I disconnected from it when I was in my teens because it's more like I fell into having to discover it more on my own, right? So like on both of my family side, on my mom and my dad's side, I grew up in two different cultures, and so I grew up like just like making medicine with both of those sides, right? But as you know, teenagers usually do, I was like, fuck all of you, fuck everything you stand for, I'm out of here, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so like I had it in there subconsciously, but it really wasn't until I ended up like legitimately homeless and having to like take care of myself. A lot of it was food based, honestly, because I knew I could eat that. Whether it was like, yeah, I knew that chickweed had medicinal properties, but I was more interested in the fact that I could like sit here and like not be hungry or eat out of a dumpster right now because I can eat this, you know? And so I would say like that point in my life definitely kicked me into it, like with my own personal relationship. But then oh God, it's been maybe 5, 6 years ago. I started the horrendous journey of slowly and safely taking myself off of benzodiazepines. And the only way that I survived that mentally was like reconnecting with the land and like instead of paying attention to that invasive thought that the withdrawal causes that tells me to do horrible things to myself, I'm gonna go out there and be like, hi, who are you? Like, and I
Yeah.
just started like there's not really a plant in my area that I haven't identified. I might
That's
not remember them all. Typically, like I let that space go if they're not somebody who wants to have a relationship with me, right? And by that I mean like they're poisonous as hell. I'm like, you don't want to have anything to do with me. So
Mhm.
I mean, I know who you are, but like I'm not holding that in my mind, But that definitely is really, really what set me on my path. I just didn't have any choice but to like face my own like horrendous slew of traumas, and then get off of this mind-numbing drug, and then really just reconnecting to the land and remembering a lot of what I grew up with, and finding myself in that and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It's that's a powerful reason on why you're connecting with the earth so intimately. So
Yeah.
how did that change your perspective, like with life of being so intimate with the earth? How did that change who you were and like
Well, a lot of people have this idea that well, a lot of social media and everything has to do with it, but like they have this romanticized impression of the land, right? they're like, oh, I'm going to be out there and I'm going to wear these flowery dresses and I'm going to be so in tune, but like the land's going to fuck you up. And so it changed my perspective because it wouldn't allow me to lie to myself about who I was or what I was doing or what I was, you know, not actually happy with, believed I was. Right. And it really just made me face myself. And you almost really have to face yourself and all of your shit to really have any type of connection like that with the land and like really heal yourself, because you can like take all the tinctures and herbal teas and things you want, but ultimately like we can be really sick still from just like all the unresolved shit inside of us. Right. Mm-hmm. And so it kind of goes hand in hand. So I'd say it shifted my perspective in the way that it like made me look at myself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's quite the perspective change for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you do daily with your herbal practice that you like kind of just implement that into your daily life?
Well, it really depends on the day and like what phase I am and like how good am I taking care of myself today. Right. Sorry, let me silence my phone. Space to do that. So like today I made sure that I drank some herbal sun tea and my nourishing herbal infusions, and I'm working with some medicinal mushrooms right now. So I took those and I'm, you know, trying to heal through a concussion. So I'm just like really like focusing on like rosemary and things that are like stimulating blood flow to my brain, things like that. But like 3 days ago, I think I just laid there on the couch and ate a bag of chips, you know, and so it's really
that's
like,
a mood, yeah.
but it's really important that when we talk about herbalism that we like don't give people this impression that we're like perfectly in tune, you know, like I'm working on opening up on my property here this really big like free hands-on herbalism learning farm called Dinner Stanley's Cooking. And the biggest thing that I've been having to like face is like really trying to rip myself off of the pedestal from people, right? Because like they're going to come here and it's just going to be like they learn by just being beside me, and I want to be like, okay, so today we're going to be out and we're going to be gathering this and we're going to be, you know, out wild crafting and we're going to make a tincture, we're going to drink our infusion. But tomorrow it's going to be like 104 degrees out because I live in high mountain desert and I'm just going to watch Netflix. Right. Like, and so I think that it's important that when we talk about like those type of routines and stuff that like we allow our humanness to be in there.
Yes. Right? Yeah, 100%. I mean, I can relate to that a lot as well. Yeah. You said you want to open a hands-on herbal school?
Yeah. We're at, it's been our massive goal for like the past 4 years. It's been like a really, really, really hard push to get to where we're at. In very late 2019, we bought this new home, and it's on a little over 41 acres for that purpose. And then the world, you know, went crazy. Like 3 months later, I'm like, wow, we were living in a tent, like in horrendous situations before we were able to buy this house. And like, I was like, wow, we moved in. Like that was like, universe is like, all right, here's your one really big thing that I'm going to give you because everything else was just fucked. But yeah, we're working on opening up this free herbalism farm where people can come learn side by side with me for free. You don't have to pay to be an apprentice. You don't have to pay for workshops. You don't have to pay for, I'd say classes, but it's still going to be like, we're just doing stuff together. I'm not going to stand there all today. We will talk about that's just not who I am. Mm-hmm. But I'm really excited about it. We're really close. We're in the middle of building a bunkhouse for apprentices to come. And we're almost ready to start accepting applications, but it's going to be like, we have like thousands and thousands of people that are like ready to apply, and we have to
I'm one of them, so
yeah. But even because we can't take on like all those people at once, clearly, you know, but like even for the people who can't come to the apprenticeship, or like they get through the interview process and it's like, hey, look, we might get along better if we're just like doing workshops together versus like cohabitating around each other. You know, you can still come to the workshops and the classes and things like that for free. And my shop solely supports that, and we've kind of just like blown up over the years with that.
That's incredible.
And so I'm pretty excited about it. I'm hopeful that we can take on at least 2 rounds of apprentices this year and a few classes. And hopefully by next year, by next spring, maybe things will be a different type of normal.
Yeah.
Where we,
yeah.
have more people come.
Yeah, definitely. That's so exciting. And I am going to be on the lookout for that for sure. So if there's any ever openings, I'm definitely going to be like wedging myself in there. Best you just know it. Oh, what's something that you feel like everybody can learn or gain from working so closely with plant allies and the earth?
Well, beyond the fact that you can take back a lot of your own like personal health sovereignty, right? People don't really think these things are related, but I really think that we can gain back like a lot of our mental health too. And we can resolve like a lot of trauma. And I don't even mean necessarily from like using the herbs, even though that's a big part of it, but we're so disconnected from where we come from, regardless of like your background, your culture, where you're from. Every single one of our ancestors lived with the land, on the land, not separate from the land. And prior to the advent of Christianity, pretty much most of us were animistic in some way or another. Like we didn't see ourselves removed. It wasn't us and that's nothing, right? And so we really, really can connect back to ourselves and find that space to like resolve shit within ourselves. But I also think that like a lot of people are put off by that idea because they think that they have to be like super spiritual.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, no, you don't have to be that at all. You just have to show up and be present. And that looks however it looks for you. You can just sit in the woods, or you can go to the woods to do specific things, or you can, it doesn't really matter. And I really try to get that across, like in my videos and stuff like that, that we can just be who we are. And like the land doesn't need you to check off any boxes of preconceived notions that society puts upon you. Right. And it's like the one place that like completely accepts you no matter what. And so I think people can gain a lot from it, in that regard.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that you can definitely see a difference with somebody who has been struggling with even their mental health and then start spending a lot of time outside and in nature. You can see the difference with them, even if they're just like going out for hikes, like not even actually like,
just being present. I mean, it for me, it literally saved my life. Part of coming off of benzos is I was on those for like a decade at high doses. They were like, oh, here, this will help you know what normal feels like. That's not normal, for my like severe CPTSD and stuff like that. And there was points and times where like I literally couldn't stop. I don't want to say voices because it was my own voice, but it was just like a thought, a picture. It's invasive, right? It's like, do this, just go, just hurt yourself. And I'm like, no, it's not me. It's my brain being angry because I'm not giving it those drugs, and like being out there on that land, like I don't know. It has saved me in ways that I can't even really put to words, it saved me emotionally, physically. This is the only time in my life that I've not like lived in like abject poverty, that's still a weird thing to accept, but, like I have all of this because of the land. So I think a lot more people could have similar stories,
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I definitely have heard similar. I mean, not exactly like your book is, but
yeah.
I was like, I do want to chat a little bit about your book eventually because I haven't gotten even halfway through, and I think it's probably in one of my top 5 favorite books I've ever read.
Well, thank you.
So you were talking earlier about how you want to take that idea of what an herbalist is and also the idea of what people think you are kind of off that pedestal. What's a common misconception about either herbalism or you or both that you get a lot?
Oh man, there are so many misconceptions about me that I don't even know how to touch that. But as far as herbalism goes, I'll touch on that first. God damn, there is no such thing as a certified herbalist in the United States. And like, there's not. I don't care what you're going to at me in the comment section of whoever's rewatching this. There's no such thing as a certified herbalist in the United States. There's no certifying board. If you take a class, that's fine if you learn that way, but your knowledge isn't any more valid than the person who's self-taught. And people are like, well, you know, people deserve to get paid, and they do. But the problem is, you give people this impression that the only way that they can be an herbalist is if they are financially privileged enough to access that gateway that you've put up the person selling the class, because you make them believe that you're certifying them in something when you give them a certification of completion. But really, you just printed that shit off. It literally means nothing. They're not any more qualified. And it's just, we live in a society where we equate like our idea is we can't hold knowledge in our brain unless we've paid for it, right? Like somehow, like being self-taught, you have less knowledge than the person that spent like $2 or $3 or $5 or $10,000 in a course that literally did nothing but spoon feed them free information with his own person's, I guess I would say, herbal agenda or perceptions put behind it upon you. Right. And that really stops people. I get that some people learn that way, it's fine, but a lot of people have the impression that they can't, that they'll never be taken seriously, that if they don't follow XYZ step the way that this person says, then they can't like do anything that's valid. But also, I really dislike how so many, it's like somebody takes a course and then it's like the knowledge held hostage for profit cycle. They take a course, I'm going to justify charging you for this knowledge that is usually ripped off from indigenous people, the same people who can't afford to take these courses, and I'll turn around and I'll sell that course, and it'll just be this, it's what, you know, it's a big circle jerk. There's no other way to say it. Yeah. You know, and they end up shutting people out, and just, I don't know, clearly it's a big trigger for me. Yeah. I hate it, you know, and people don't believe they're smart enough, and they absolutely are. And it's just, so that's a huge misconception, that you really have to pay for courses or anything like that to become an herbalist. You really don't.
I love that that's one of your, like, I don't want to say catchphrase, like whatever, but like, you were smart enough is probably like, it's just such a welcoming, like warming and like validating thing to like read all over the place on all of your platforms. And it's like, with something as vast as herbalism, like that's a big thing to try to learn, you know, having that just like plastered all over your platform. It's always like, oh, you know what, you're right, I am. And then kind of like
they are, and they are
little boost of, that little boost of motivation of like, yeah, I am smart enough to learn this. And I appreciate you for putting that everywhere.
Yeah, I really believe it. You know, I grew up being told by all sorts of systems and things that like I was not smart enough and basically worthless, or this or this or that. And you know what? Like, I am actually really smart. I'm really capable, and everybody else is too. And, you know, we also can challenge like the definition of like what we perceive as smart. Like, I know a lot of people, and this sounds mean, but I know a lot of people with like college educations that I wouldn't really necessarily consider to be the smartest people, that they're smart enough to do this still. But I just mean, you know, like that ability to achieve things in a high realm in one area or another doesn't mean that you're not intelligent. Correct. You know, and I just want people to try, you know. Yeah. Oh, and then as far as a misconception about myself, I could fill a book, right? But really, a lot of people might think that, I don't know, I've got a mouth on me. You know, I grew up on the streets, like, and I know that sounds funny, but I did, you know, and like, I'm small, so like I was better at like cutting people down with words to protect myself, you know, but like, I'm not a mean person, but also like, don't fuck around, you know, like, but I just, I don't know. I think a lot of people also assume that I want to like attack their livelihood, right? There aren't very many herbalists that really like who I am, because I'm like challenging the system that they're comfortable in, right? They're like, if I had like $5 for every time I heard somebody say I deserve to earn a living, right? And we do, of course, we all do, but like, I would have a lot of money. I'd have this house paid off. The truth is, I'm not trying to attack that person's livelihood. I understand they make money off of courses and things like that. I'm trying to attack the system that makes us believe that if we don't have money to pay, that we can't take our own health back into our hands with herbs, you know. And I really, or just in general, and it really, really, really gets to me. It bugs me, you know, because they when they come at me, they're not even in a place where their critical thinking skills are engaged, because they're coming from a place of emotion, right? I'm like, you're not here to discuss this with me, you're here to yell at me. But what I'm trying to say is, the average herbalism course, the average herbalism apprenticeship, or even like if you're going for like a, oh come on, concussion brain, what's the word, an evaluation, like you're going to a doctor, like a clinical herbalist, they charge more per hour than the average doctor does. You know, you're looking at something like usually $200 to $300 per hour. I just went and saw a functional medicine doctor with no insurance for $150, right? Yeah. You know, and they can write me prescriptions. And not that I'm like pro pharma or nothing, but sometimes, damn, you need that, you know? But if I already can't pay for healthcare, I already can't like go to your clinic. I can't afford to take a course, or even worse, people take money out of their own pocket that they don't have in the first place because they're making minimum wage, you know, at a dead end job. Mm-hmm. And they give money to somebody because they think it's going to certify them in something, when they could have like spent $50 of that on books and like just gone outside and seen what's growing and watched some YouTube videos and like really started to take the stuff into their own hands without putting money into their pocket. So more about like, everybody deserves to earn a living, but like, how ethical do you feel about that? Right. So I'm more so trying to get people to challenge the system they're comfortable in. Right. You know, how are you not accessible? I barely make $1,500 a month. Most people, that's a lot of money. And like, all of that goes to like rent and food and bills. And now you want like $3,000 or $4,000 for a course that lasts, a self-guided course nonetheless, that lasts like a month at best. And I can't even do anything with that. I mean, you can do stuff with it, you know, like knowledge wise, but it's just, it gets to me, you know, clearly.
I think there's a difference between kind of like a cash grab course and a course that actually makes, like, challenges you as a student to grow in whatever skill set, and like have you critically think and put those things to the test. Like those are two very different courses.
They are, but even within that, it's still, what bothers me is, even if they've put a lot of time into it and it's helping people, the problem is they're still giving people the impression that they're being certified in something. Very few of them, they'll all give you a certification of completement, or have like a ceremony, things like that, you know, and you have this thing you're showing on the wall. Well, that tells you subconsciously that like what you've paid for is worth so much more than if you taught yourself, right? And almost none of them have anything on their website that actually proclaims that it's not something that certifies you. What would you do if you read through this course and you're like, wow, this sounds fucking awesome, and you were like, and you got to the end and they're like, and we'll give you a certification of completement that literally doesn't mean anything? How would you feel if they added that to the end of it, right? So you take that factor away and you see that they're giving you a certificate, and it automatically makes you justify the amount of money you're giving them. It's just subconscious, you know? And so, I don't want people to not earn a living. I just want them to be more open and ethical and accessible, and like really evaluate like what they're doing and how it can harm people and shut people out in the cold if they can't afford to pay. Right.
Yeah. I mean, hey, I'm glad that you're like giving me full ass answers, you know, like it's not just people just think that I'm more sarcastic than I am, and then like that's it, you know. I like the full conversation. Okay, so what are some of your, so reaching off of that, what are some of your favorite resources about herbalism other than just the earth herself? Like, do you have any favorite books or?
So I did this herbal recommendation book video. Herbal, there go brain. Geez, that was a concussion coming out. An herbal book recommendation video. And everybody was really excited about it, right? And then I didn't tell them a single book to buy, and they're like, what? Well, the thing is, I'm not going to give out names of books, because the books that I read aren't any good for your bioregion unless you happen to live in Northeast Oregon, right? So the things that I tell people to do is find the field identification guides, like plant identification stuff for your area. Get a hold of your county agricultural department and ask them for a list of their invasive weeds. Sometimes they sell a little booklet. Farmers are trying to get rid of them, but a lot of them are medicinal, right? And they're really documenting what grows around here very well, or wherever you're at, right? And so when you take the time to identify the plants around you, you become less dependent on plants that you would never naturally like encounter. Like so many people are taking things from like the Amazon or this or far away, but you're completely dependent on that because likely you can't grow it, you can't source it, you can't find it. And there's lots of science that says our body responds best to the herbs that are growing around us. We share a microbiome, right? Like when I eat a carrot from my garden, my body gets all types of DNA messages about like the dirt and what's going on out here and what the environment is like. Same thing if you get some catnip and make some tea or whatever you're going to do from your area, it'll be more effective than when you get from outside of your area. And so it really is just about getting on the land. There's not really any other resource beyond her. You step out there and you look what's growing and you identify her, and then you use Google. Honestly, what's really fantastic about Google and any other search engine you want to use is that you can go and learn about this individual plant from varying different resources. Never have I found a book that doesn't end up outdated, including my own. Wow. Right? Think about that. Every time somebody writes a book, it's outdated within probably a decade, maybe less, depending on how the science is changing or what we know, or like your region, or like what was believed once to be isn't anymore. Things are constantly changing. Science and herbalism aren't fixed, right? And neither of them are fixed in any way. They're always changing and evolving. And so these books are handy, but I see a lot of people using a lot of really outdated stuff. You know, and we're like, well, we know that's not, you know, necessarily accurate anymore. We know that, like, for instance, St. John's wort, it doesn't really cause a sunburn unless you're ingesting it from a dried format, right? Because it can make you photosensitive. But if you're using fresh plant matter, like, and making a tincture or a fresh infused oil, it's not going to sunburn you. It's when it goes dry, you know. And just so finding books from your region to help identify plants, but then starting your own books. What do you read? What do you read online? What can you write? Write in a journal. Get, you know, a 97-cent, you know, school journal and start writing in it. But also when you're looking online, beyond the fact that it's not as outdated, you get all different perspectives. What I feel about a plant and what I know about a plant will be different than what somebody else does. Right? But also you can find somewhere that you feel comfortable in, because sometimes you better believe there's $1 billion agenda behind the herbalism industry. And so when you're reading one thing or another, this person might be pushing their own agenda on you and burying things. And if you were just reading that and no other source, you wouldn't know that. That would just be what you take maybe as gospel, right? Versus if you're reading from all these different sources, you might be like, well, that's conflicting from what they're saying. Maybe right. I should read that. But just the book, you kind of get stuck in that. So I think that is probably my best advice for resources.
I think that's great advice. Critical thinking is probably one of the best tools you can use when you're learning anything new, especially something as complicated as herbalism. What's something that you feel like about, or what's something about herbalism that you feel like is really important but is often overlooked?
Well, the fact that pharmaceutical medication has only been around for, at best, about 1,000, maybe 2,000 years. And even then it's arguable that like big pharma hasn't been around since like past probably like the 1900s. And like your ancestors, no matter where you came from, were healing themselves with herbs since like the dawn of time. Like, and so, you know, we have to respect herbs. I don't personally work with I don't work with poisonous plants. I know there's a time and a place, but like the time and the place isn't Tuesday when I'm all right. You know, like I can work with these things that focus on nourishing my body. But I really think that, I lost it. Come on, concussion brain.
Oh no.
I was talking about, you know, it gets worse when you try to remember it.
Okay, no, because then you kept
okay, so, oh my God, my brain's like, what even was the question?
Oh, it's fine. Take your time. I was just asking, what's something about herbalism that you feel is very important but commonly
Oh yeah, it completely, you can take your health back into your hand on in your own hands on like a super like nourishing level. But also a lot of people are let down by the medical industry. Like for instance, I have a bad concussion right now. I went to the emergency room for that, and the very misogynistic doctor basically told me that I don't know if you read that post or not, but it was pretty, yeah, he was like, oh, you have a concussion, you're just overreacting, you're being emotional. But concussions, when they're severe, they make you have emotions. So like I was crying for no reason. I'm like, I don't know why I'm crying, I'm just crying. Well, I damaged my fucking brain, that's why I'm crying, doctor. And basically that I should just take ibuprofen and, you know, be on my way. You know, I even heard him say, he's like, well, maybe tonight's the night, you don't have to cook dinner. I'm like, dude, I am just like,
what the fuck?
It was really bad.
Are you fucking kidding me?
He didn't even give me a referral to the concussion clinic like he did my husband, who had a concussion last year. The same doctor, right? And so here I am. I don't have the energy to fight him.
Yeah.
Right? So like, this is a really long roundabout way to say it, but like I am now taking care of myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that the pharmaceutical industry doesn't want us to do. And so I really think that people can benefit with herbalism by just having, again, that like health sovereignty, right? Like he should have treated me well. I had to force him to give me an MRI to make sure that I wasn't, you know, fucking bleeding out
right.
in my brain. But here I am just on my own, and that's okay because I have what my ancestors always had, the ability to access plants and things like that. Even if you do like live in a city. Right. You can still typically order these things. And it's just, I don't know, I think it's really important for a lot of reasons beyond taking your health back into your hand. I think that we actually, at this point in time, and every point in time, we have a real responsibility to reconnect with the land. Yeah. I mean, look at what we have done. If you really think about it in this way, when Christianity came through, it really severed us from the land. And that disconnect from the land and like being like rooted in place and who we are, and including the plants and all of that stuff, caused so much genocide and colonization, and just decimated like cultures everywhere. And our disconnection, and it's definitely decimated the earth because we stopped seeing ourselves as part of it, and seeing ourselves as like an owner of it. And so we've just ripped and raped and pillaged and just completely destroyed the land. And you're not going to fix that by not being a part of the cycle. Like if you want to really do something for yourself, for your health, for like the earth, for your culture, you have to start showing back up on the thing that was taking care of you, that is still taking care of you, even if you're disconnected from like day one. You know, so I think that's something that we can definitely gain from herbalism.
Yeah, absolutely. Personal power and connecting back with the earth and taking care of her.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite herb, or do you have like a top 3? I know, I was like, this is probably not.
It's like asking me like which one of my kids is the favorite. Am I allowed to answer?
Yeah.
Like, no, I don't have a favorite with my kids. They're both asshole teenagers. I love them very much. Let's see. You know, I really like nettle. I think that stinging nettle is definitely one that most people should be working with. She's just amazing at supporting like stressed out, taxed, severely nutritionally depleted, because we all are, because our soil is, bodies, you know. And she is just a really great one to give a lot of like stamina and energy back. She's probably why I haven't literally died from like adrenal failure.
Wow.
Yeah, you know, she really supports adrenal health, and by proxy like the HPA axis in your brain and all that kind of stuff. And I won't nerd out too much on it, but also yarrow. I think everybody like needs to have yarrow in their house. I don't care if it's yarrow tincture, I don't care if it's dried yarrow, yarrow oil, not essential oils, that'll kill you, please. Like real yarrow. She's amazing for stopping bleeding, for fevers, for infections, for oral health, for like, you know, nosebleeds, anything blood. She's very related to that. But my kids, when I'm dead and gone, the thing that they'll probably joke about is like, Mom, I cut myself, get the yarrow. Right, like it's like that thing, like growing up, like my grandma, like she'd always just be like, oh, here's your Sprite or whatever because you're feeling under the weather, or take this tablet that's probably just calcium. They all have the thing, but my thing is yarrow. Put yarrow on it. Put some yarrow on it. Seriously, put some fucking yarrow on it. Did you put yarrow on it? Like,
Did you try the yarrow yet?
yeah, and it can, for acne, for everything, yarrow. And she's a really good one. And now see the third one. What would the third one be? Who do I use a lot as the third one? I use so many. Probably I would say some sort of nervine. I stop myself from like losing my shit, like mentally and like physically with catnip pretty often. A lot of people think of her as getting cats high. They're not actually high. It gets cats horny. That's what's happening when you think your cat just is like high as balls. He actually just really wants to fuck. That's what happens. But in humans, in humans, what she does is she like calms down, like when you're having like a panic attack, or like she just helps you step back and like really calms you down. But she's also pretty good for like some people's anxiety, like will come about physically, like I violently shit myself if I have a bad enough anxiety attack, right? Like, and that's just a human thing. We don't want to talk about it, but like a nervous stomach is a very real thing, And so she actually helps stop that. But she's also really good for menstrual cramps, mild pain, insomnia. And so I think she's a good one. But you could probably interchange that with any other in the mint family. Like you could say, oh, lemon balm does that for me, but maybe hop over to the California poppy realm, which isn't even in the same family. Anything that's really just going to like help you like stop losing your shit in some way, I think is handy to have on hand.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially in our current world.
Yeah. I loved okay, I'm gonna gush about your book right now just a little bit.
Okay.
But
all right.
So I was actually reading your book. I brought it as like, because I had just gotten it the day before I left for a trip. And so I was like, all right, perfect. And I was like on the beach too. I was like, oh cool. And I got 5 pages in and I like set it down and I was like, fuck. Like I was like
a book to read on the beach.
I know, but I was like, holy shit. And then when you say somewhere you weren't able to like really write, a book about your life and then a book about herbal or an herbal book without like putting them together. You were like, I have to put them together. And so I was kind of like, that's weird. And then I started reading it and I totally understood why after like the first chapter. And the way that you explain, I think the first one is actually yarrow that you talk about.
Mm-hmm.
The way that you explain how she works and how to work with her is so down to earth and so easy to understand compared to anything else that I've ever really read. And so like that's another reason why I just like kept like just climbing to one of the tops of like, this is one of my favorite books I've already read. Because you break it down into something that it's not so textbook feeling.
We're having a conversation.
Yeah, like I actually feel like you're just telling me how to use it like a normal fucking person and on a normal fucking day of like, this is how you would use this herb and how you would work with her. And I just like was like, God, this is a breath of fresh air.
Right, like how it just like interlock. Well, I couldn't write them separately. It was really hard. I tried. I started writing an herbal book and it just sounded, I don't know, it sounded douchey. There's no other way to like, because some of them come across that way. You're like, and the blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, fuck, this is so dry. Like, there's no like people in that. And one of the things is I'm dysgraphic on top of my own like personal neurodiversity. And that means that like, it's a type of dyslexia, right? Like in a nutshell, they would just say that my handwriting is horrendous. You can't read it because my brain doesn't like work with my hand very well. Apparently not my mouth either right now. But also it really influences the way that I write. And when I did seek out an editor besides my husband, it was a joke because they were like, well, I was like, it's really important that like you keep my voice in it, because a lot of the feedback that I've gotten is people literally hear me talk while while they're reading. And of course, those are the people that have like heard me talk and stuff like that, but mainly it's my followers and such that are purchasing the book anyways. But he was like, well, we need to swap this around, and this sentence would look better if it was here. And this, I'm like, he's like, well, your dysgraphia is really showing. I'm like, cool. Remember that part where I said, don't remove my voice? Well, dude, I'm fucking dysgraphic. So if you take that out, you're literally like washing me away. He's like, well, but people who aren't this way will read it better. I'm like, yeah, but that's who I am.
Yeah.
All right. And so I just kind of rolled with it that way. I chose at times to like be fucking grammatically incorrect because it lets my voice come through better than if it was like perfect.
Yes.
You know, and stripped away. But beyond that, I don't know. It's not hard to talk about. It's just hard to talk about. In regards of like putting the stories together, because how could I talk about Yarrow without talking about like, oh, that one time where I'm not really sure what happened, and I don't know if that dude is real. I really don't.
Yeah.
You know, like,
yeah.
or like, how do I just talk about her and not give, you know, and not like, not follow through with it, like, because I talk in story. It's like, especially in my dad's culture, I'm only half, I'm not enough of anything to be anything, right? But like on my dad's side, oh, we're Irish travelers, which isn't just an Irish person that travels around. We're the ethnic minority of Ireland. We're the indigenous people for there. A lot of them came to America when it was made illegal for us to be itinerant. You know, our culture was outlawed anyhow. And so we grew up like we're an oral culture. Like we didn't really have written language really. Well, we do now for, you know, we all speak English and shit, but like, and so like, I don't know how to tell you how to do something without giving you a story about it.
Yeah.
Right. And so how the fuck do I just talk about Yarrow without, like, there's no way that it wouldn't slip in.
Right. Well, and I think that that's the way that people kind of just learn in general. Like it's more practical to teach in stories. Like that's why there's lore and folklore and like, you know, all these different mythologies, and it's like that's how we learn. So
definitely. Well, you know, that's kind of part of what I talk about with opening the herbal farm here. Like I've had people be like, well, what will the course material be like? I'm like, I don't know, whatever the fuck we do today. Because
you're just gonna be you're an apprentice. You're just following me around and seeing.
Yeah, you know, but in general, like even on my YouTube videos and stuff, I try to just like, I'm just having a conversation with people.
Yeah.
Like I'm not trying to present this as like, you know, I'm not gonna have like anything like slide across the screen and like give like compound names or something that are like that. I'm like, we're just gonna make this shit. Yeah. And this is how we do it. And I hear so many people being like, wow, you know, like I've never learned herbalism so easy before, or like this is the first time it's really sunk in, or like I'm now not afraid to do it. And I think that I don't even want to give myself credit for that, because it's more just about the fact that like we're just talking. Right. Like I just took away all the bullshit. I don't really try to put my own agenda in there, other than you don't got to pay thousands of dollars to do this, and you're definitely smart enough to do it. Right. That's all I really want them to take away, and the knowledge that they needed. And at the end of the day, I hope that they don't need me anymore.
Right.
And
that's where a good teacher comes in, is eventually I want you to not need me.
Yeah.
I want you to be able to grow past that. Yeah, I think that's wonderful. What was it like writing that book? Because it's hard to read it in a good way, you know, like as in like, but it's hard to read it. Like some of the things that you went through, like what was that like to put and publish that?
I don't know. It's kind of damaging, actually. Like, in a good way. I don't know if that is the same realm, but like, I needed a place to put these things outside of my head, right? And it's really weird because people are like, "I love your book," and I'm like, "Do I say thank you to that?" Because it's kind of fucked up. Like, I'm like, thanks. I'm so glad you loved it. Like, it's kind of like, do I like this post or whatever that's like really fucked up, like about something that happened? Like, and so I kind of feel the same way about it. But I also feel like I felt like it was important beyond myself, because I wanted to show people that like you could be just fucking broken and like still come through, you know. They'll be all right. And like, just to put this in perspective, that was only like a handful of things that happened in that period of my life. And my life continued after the book, and it didn't continue easier. And that was just really the fucking trauma that was involved. Yeah, it's hard being like a homeless female regardless. Like, you know, a little easier these days, a little bit, you know, just because like phones are a thing. And, you know, that makes me feel old to realize that when I wrote that book that like there wasn't like a cell phone. Like I have like, I think 3 pictures of myself in there from like a young age. That was it. That's all I have, because, you know, nobody was rocking around with like a Polaroid camera while they were like eating out of a dumpster, you know,
Right.
like, um, but it was hard. It was hard. And like, people want to talk about it, and I get it because I wrote a book,
Hi.
right? Like, and we're talking about it, and like, but also I'm like, yeah, it's a thing.
Yeah.
And but the hardest, honestly, the hardest part is, part of my neurodiversity is I'm extremely visual spatial. Like, inside of my head, I can like imagine like whole worlds and see it. Like, I can see it. And so when I was having to write that, it was definitely a part of healing, you know, working through the trauma. I had to see it, you know, like I had to relive it. Like, I smelled it, I tasted it, every inch of it. And it made me remember things that, like, you know, I hadn't for a while, or just your brain just blocks that shit out. And I'm fine with that. It knows what it's doing, you
Yeah.
know, like, you got to face it slowly too,
I
you
don't
know,
really
but
need to, I don't need to not block it, so it's fine.
yeah, you know, it's like, it's trying to protect me from something, you know, but, so it was also kind of like really affirming. The elderberry chapter in particular, I don't know if you've gotten that far.
Not yet.
Well, that one's rough. And it really just helped me come to terms with what this person that I was like groomed by and like thought was the love of my life, like, had really like done to me, you know, like on a physical and emotional level. And like, it almost like helped me like move past all the gaslighting, you know, like I still deal with that every day of my life. Like, well, nobody's gaslighting me now. I just mean the repercussions of it. But like, I almost had to write it because I knew those things had happened to me. And I'm like, okay, well, that's a long time ago. Cause I was, you know, I'm almost 36 now. And that was just when I was some homeless teenager, you know, but, well, you know, those are the most like foundational years of our life, where like our brain is developing and everything we're told is what we're like, is cemented. Right. And so writing it, I think, was an important part of making myself really feel it and like evaluate it like years later for what it really was.
Yeah.
You know, like, and you haven't read that chapter yet, but that particular individual, this will sound super fucked up, but I'm happy to say that he ended his life about a year
I mean,
ago.
once I read it, I'm sure I'll probably.
Yeah, you know, it's like, well, I felt a lot of guilt for that when I found out that he had done that, because I'm like, I shouldn't feel relieved.
Yeah.
But then I did a lot of reading and learning that like a lot of victims feel that way. We're like, because we grew up here, like, fucker's still around, like, you know, and like he could just pop up anywhere. And I'm like, I felt like I won something, right? Like, and but that one really, that one really just had to like, I had to face it. I really, really, really had to face it and like let go of like that grip that he had, you know, and just, yeah. And I'd even say that chapter was pretty a good example of like being foundational and like having to like find like my own voice in herbalism, you know, because he was an herbalist too, you know. And so yeah. but I also wrote it in such a way that people can read it even if they're not like ready to read about somebody else's traumas, because you can totally just like every other chapter, you know, it's like I talk about a trauma that happened and Yara was involved, and then there's the next chapter all about Yara. And then it just kind of hops that way. And the whole back half of the book that you haven't got to yet is like tons of like information on like how to make tinctures, salves, bombs, but also like looking into like the gathering ethics and things like the dangers of essential oils and why I don't use them at all, things like that. And so there's a lot of the book that even if people don't want to read about trauma right off the bat, they can learn about the herbs still and how to use them. So it was like a book inside a book.
Yeah, it is.
I also don't think I've ever come across an herbalism book like that before. I'm like, I don't know if I can like smash up a memoir with a,
it's
you know,
incredibly unique. And like you said earlier, your voice is very prominent, which I really appreciate because, you know, I follow you for a reason and I like your content for a reason. So being able to read it and like know that it's definitely you who's writing it and there was no like harsh filter that went through, you know.
Yeah.
It was like nice to be like, okay, I'm just like having a conversation with her still.
Yeah, and I have zero filter, so
which I appreciate. Yeah, thank you for answering that. I know that probably was like
Yeah.
a big question. Um, so back to working with plant allies and everything. What's well, you kind of already answered this actually, because I was gonna ask what's one plant ally that you feel like everyone should have, but you said yarrow, catnip, and what was the other
Nettle.
one? Nettle,
Stinging
stinging
nettle,
nettle.
yeah.
Yeah. So I think those three are wonderful also, and I agree with you. Um, Now we're gonna get on lighter topic. What's do you have a favorite tea that you like to make or a favorite tea brand?
I don't really drink teas and out of bags,
Hmm.
right? Like, because just so you know, like when you get bag tea from the store, it's like usually pretty old,
Hmm.
and there's such a small amount in those bags that it's just for flavoring. You're not really getting a whole, like if I do, it's like I've got like 4 or 5 fucking bags in a cup because I want enough in there, right?
Right.
Um, but lately I really like the nervines, and I'm trying to heal my damaged brain. So I'm working with a lot of linden. That's more of a nourishing herbal infusion,
Hmm.
which is different than a tea. But I also work with a lot of like chamomile. I really love chamomile iced with cream in it, like sweet cream. A
Oh
little
yes,
cream.
it's so good.
Yes, people always, I put
It's
so much cream in all my teas.
it's
Like
so underrated. Ugh.
it really is. And then I'm kind of a snob about chamomile.
Oh,
Like so like way back in the day, when I was just like a random homeless kid running around, and I was happened to be in Eugene, Oregon at the time, there was like this like shelter that you could go into for 2 or 3 days and shower and eat and all this stuff. And they always had this chamomile tea, and it was like, I don't know where it came from, but it was like the most flavorful like chamomile. But also I think I associate it with that because I felt really safe there. Like that was the first, like one of the few times during my childhood where like I experienced the feeling of safe. And so for me, I think chamomile brings that back, right? Like I feel safe. And so like I'm definitely growing my own this year now, but I also have ordered just about every variety of chamomile. And like I have like called like from different places and providers and farms and things like that. I'm like, is this the one? I'm like, I'm drinking this shit like it's fucking wine, you know? I'm like, so I really like chamomile. And then I've been working with Tulsi a lot. She is one that you kind of have to make like a tea because she has so many volatile oils in her. You wouldn't want to steep her for a long time. Same as chamomile. I like Tulsi with a little bit of ginger in it.
mm.
And she's a really good adaptogen, meaning she just helps your body like cope with stress, and she stabilizes like sugar levels, and she's just going to help lower cortisol levels, which is like the stress hormone. It makes your armpits stink and things like that. Um, and then let's see, I drink nettle on a pretty regular basis, but that's an infusion. I cycle through all those too. And then I've been drinking a lot of, I don't know if it's a tea necessarily. Well, it's not a tea. No, I've been making, did you see that video about my homemade electrolytes? Where it's like
Yeah, I
cherry
did.
lime electrolyte. I
Mhm,
did
yeah.
that video blew up, and I'm like, I randomly made that in my kitchen, kind of in pajamas. And I was like, all right. But I've been drinking a lot of that because with my concussion, your body like burns through way more like minerals and stuff, like trying to heal itself. So I've been probably drinking about a half gallon of that a day, which is just
Dang.
really, it's just, well, it's also been like, I live in Northeast Oregon, and we're like high mountain desert. And like the past week, it's been like over 100 degrees suddenly in June. So I need it, you know?
Yeah, we're
like,
getting there.
but that's basically just homemade cherry limeade with high quality like sea salt in it. But for me, sometimes like, I don't know, like herbs are food to me. So like I don't really differentiate the two. Like, why would we consider something like nettle an herb, but not like a cherry or a lime?
Yeah.
Right? Just read it's the same thing. Well, cherry is like a really powerful anti-inflammatory.
Hmm.
You know, lime helps with digestion and your immune system. And everybody needs salt. Our body needs so much more salt than we're realizing. So I guess that is kind of it's definitely an herbal to work with, right? Because they have purposes beyond hydrating.
Right.
Um, yeah, I think those are probably my primarily ones that I'm living off of, but it might be different in a month,
True.
you know.
Yeah, everything's always changing. Do you have any advice for aspiring herbalists that live in a city?
Realize that the city ends, right? Like, so like people like, let's say somebody lives in New York, right? Well, you know, like there's a lot of nature surrounding you. You might have to make a day trip, but there's also tons of like like outer areas that you can go. And you have to get rid of the mindset that it's not worth visiting the land unless you can harvest something from there. Right. Because how would you feel if your friend's like, hey, I want to hang out, but like I need like $24.99 or like
Every time.
I need you to just constantly be giving me something from yourself. And we have to break that like consumerism mindset when it comes to like being out on the land. And so sure, maybe you probably shouldn't gather anything from Central Park, but you can definitely go there and see what's growing, because nobody's looking. Nobody's noticing her. Nobody's knowing who's growing there and paying attention to. And you can still build a relationship with these plants, even if you can't gather them. Right. And then when you get brave and you start taking a drive out of the city and you start going to the national forests that are around you, or the Bureau of Land Management that's around you, or any of the one of like, I think there's like, gosh, it's in my book, but I'm concussed. I think there's something like over 10,000 national parks all over the United States that are like thousands and thousands of acres that you can go to, you know. And I think a lot of people, when they are aspiring to be an herbalist, they get discouraged because they're like, well, I don't even have a backyard. Right. But you can definitely find ways to still get outside and start exploring further and learning more. There were a lot of places that even where I grew up like hunting and fishing and doing all that stuff here and wildcrafting with my family. I've been a lot of places, but there's been a lot of places in the past 5 years that I would have never known existed if I didn't go exploring. If I didn't pull up a map on my phone or whatever and look around and see what's what, and what can I take that road, you know, and then just go and explore things. But also, it's okay to order herbs. It's totally okay to order herbs. I would just say to like look for like smaller herbal shops or like big, you know, conglomerates. I can't believe I said that word right. I was like, I'm gonna stammer over that one. Right. And you can just kind of like look at their ethics, like who are you supporting when you purchase from them? You know, we do so much of this when we shop around in general, but we don't typically think to do it with herbs, I notice. Right. And also you can ask yourself, well, you know, like I work with Tulsi and she's from East India, so she's not native to here, but the climate is similar enough that I can grow her, so my body's willing to work with her. But like maybe instead of trying to find like the most rare and poisonous herb, right? Like, oh, okay, here's a good example. A lot of people work with golden seal. She is native here to the US and a lot of other places, but she's also endangered because so many people have been over harvesting her. Oh, and by the way, she can shut your kidneys down really easily. You know, she can cause you to go into renal failure, and people are like, oh, I've got a cold, take golden seal, or like this for golden seal. I'm like, oh my God, stop. Or you could, you know, work with Oregon grape, who has the same berberine content that they're after in the golden seal that actually supports your kidneys and your liver and your digestive health. So like, I would say when you start using herbs, when you see somebody that's using like an herb all the time and constantly recommending it, no matter who it is, I don't care if it's me, if it's somebody else, be like, is this herb toxic? Can I find a more gentle ally that does the same thing but supports my body's natural functions instead of poisoning them into working? Right. You know, like people like to work with herbs like their pharmaceuticals a lot. You know, a lot of herbalists wear like a green lab coat, as I call it, right? They're wanting to like pretend like these things are pharmaceuticals. And I think that that's where a lot of beginning herbalists, and I swear to God, it ties together. That's where a lot of beginning herbalists get overwhelmed because they're scary, right? Like, I don't want to hurt myself with herbs. And that's a real fear to have. It's genuine, it's justified. But a lot of that comes from people who are wanting to play pretend doctor. They're wanting to use these herbs like they're pharmaceuticals. They want to tell you a specific dose. People are like, in my like my tincture making videos, I never talk about the dose. I very rarely talk about it. And people are like, what's the dose? I'm like, I don't know. What's your body like? Right? Because we're all different. I usually say, you know, start slow and go up and see what your body does. But with a lot of these dangerous herbs, you can be like, oh, I took 5 drops and I fucked my kidney up, you know? And so it's really just a matter of, if a person is telling you to use all these toxic herbs, I'm not saying that there isn't a time and a place and that you can eventually like ease into that learning, but find somewhere else. Find something else, find something softer, find something more food and nutrition based and work from there. And with that, you'll start to have more confidence with yourself, right? Like of what's safe and what can nourish and what can like really help you move forward in trusting yourself and like taking your health back into your own hands. Sorry, that was like one really just My
That's
simple
fine.
perception.
The more information, the better. I'm not mad about it at all. Um, was there anything as an herbalist that you learned the hard way?
Yeah. And I get this question a lot. Well, phrased differently, or how I'm going to answer it. I get it a lot, I should say. Um, as an herbalist who sells things,
Mm-hmm.
I wish in the beginning that I would have started out compliant, right? Like keeping records and like being CGMP compliant and like getting my tinctures tested. And tincture tested will be a hard one for beginners because it's a little expensive to get them tested and stuff. But beyond that, and I just say that because once my shop and everything did blow up, I had to like do like 3 years worth of back work.
Ooh.
Be like, it took me and this really awesome woman named Chris, who's my SOP lady, is what I call her, which is standard operating procedures. It took us the better part of 8 months, 8 to 12 months to get like the foundation set in place for me to be compliant. And then like every day we work at it. Every day we work at
Wow.
doing something else that we're like, because like a lot of people, if you're going to do this for a living, and a lot of people, times are hard. So people were already flocking to herbalism. Hi, meow meow. Cat's gonna join me.
The cat's name is Meow
Miss
Meow.
Meow Meow. Yeah.
I love
That's all
it.
she does is she meow meows all the time, and she's wild. And so we didn't get a cat. She just like started coming through our doggy door one day and just like forced the dogs to accept her. She killed a snake like an hour ago and just brought it to the porch.
Oh,
So I
thank
just collect wild forest cats. Oh, what was I saying? Oh, if you're going to build something to support yourself and it's important to you, you have to do the work to protect it. Right now, my apothecary is the reason that I have a roof over my head, a flushing toilet, that my children have food, gas in the tank. You know what would really suck? If I did all this and then like fucking Karens are always turning me into the FDA. That happens all the time. People get mad at me for my views or my opinions, and like I get turned into the FDA. It would suck if when they showed up I wasn't compliant.
Yeah.
They would shut me down, and I wouldn't probably have the resources to financially put out all that money to like fix it and open back up. And then essentially I'm screwed, right? And now a lot of people will say, well, I don't expect it to go big or do anything like that, but you never know.
True.
Like literally I started out selling like a few tinctures here and there, and now like we're close enough to like in the next year we'll probably have a lot of our offerings in stores, like not like just little boutiques but like stores.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's a blessing and a curse. That's why I look so tired. Right, like we're working on it, but like but beyond that, like if they're not wanting to like become a for-profit herbalist, like the one thing that like I really wish that I knew in the beginning was that I'm smart enough, right? That's a big thing to me. Like I need them to know that they are absolutely smart enough to do this. And if you find yourself learning from a source where you feel like you can't understand what they're saying, they don't understand what they're teaching. Right. If you find somebody that doesn't know how to explain what they're doing so you can just absorb it, they're just regurgitating all the shit they read off a page. Right. Because we live in a prep for test society where we're not actually learning, we're just retaining. There's a difference between learning something and retaining something. And also, nobody can do this for you. You can't pay for a connection with the land. You can't like buy your way into this. You have to do the work. You have to show up and do the work. And sometimes it's going to suck. And you have to fail. You have to be brave enough to fail, because if you don't even try, you've already failed, and you won't learn shit if you don't get something wrong. Like learn by doing things wrong. I can't tell you how many times I've been like, well, that really, really didn't work. But now I know going forward.
Yeah, exactly.
But now I know going forward that I can't add that to a cream, or that I can't get that to work the way I want it to, or like nobody liked that, like,
failure is such a good teacher.
Yeah, because going forward I can be like, okay, but that didn't work that time. I should have to do it this way, and just being brave enough to try. Like I tell people that they're smart enough. Now you have to be brave enough. All right, you have to be brave enough.
I like that motto.
Right.
Yeah, give me a t-shirt with that on there. I'll buy it.
People always ask me to make merchandise, and I'm like, I don't know. It feels fucking weird.
Yeah,
Like, I'm just not to that level yet.
it is weird. I like made merchandise and I like forget about it because I'm like, people are like, why don't you promote it? And I'm like, because that's weird to be like, wear this
Yeah.
t-shirt. I don't know. It's strange. But
Yeah.
I have one more question for you, and then we're gonna end it here for
Okay.
the YouTube people, and then we'll move over for Patreon.
Okay.
My last question is, what do you like to do in your free time when you're not being an herbalist? When you're just like,
Can I grab something and show it to you? I should
yeah.
have been prepared. Let me grab it.
No, you didn't know I was gonna ask this question. I don't know.
I really I love to do intricate seed bead work. And when I say seed bead work and intricate, I mean like that's solid
Oh my
beads.
God, that's beautiful.
And so I grew up doing this. I don't make any claims or the face of anything, but my mom and her family, they're indigenous.
Mm-hmm.
I took after my very white Irish traveler father. And like I said, I'm not enough of either to be anything. I don't ever want to be pretend like I'm the voice for either of those cultures. But I did grow up learning this beadwork with my grandma and my aunts.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a big thing for me, and it really helps me get out of my head. Mm-hmm. I have a neurodiversity that goes a million miles an hour. I typically have like anywhere between like 5 to 10 trains of thoughts in my head at once. And so meditation literally does not work for me. It actually causes my particular neurodiversity harm to try to quiet it. Mm-hmm. But when I do my beadwork, and I'm stitching every single one of these beads in place, like every single one I'm threading and tacking down. It allows me to have like one or two like pinpoint trains of thoughts, right? Yeah. Because I also have a lot of psychomotor, which sounds scary, like I'm a psycho, but it just means that that's why I talk a lot. That's why I can just, and I'm concussed right now, people. Like, I could go more if I wasn't like half-mast right now. And so it ties into calming my brain down, but I'm doing this with my hand constantly. Mm-hmm. So it's hand-eye coordination, which feeds that part of my neurodiversity, which is about the only thing that will allow me to set down quietly. I can grab one more and show you a different one. Give me 1 second. It's right here. Right here on the wall. Okay. So I like to do like a lot of animal stuff. Yeah, and there's a big old, I didn't know if I wanted to make it like a hair piece or I'm showing it to my camera. I don't know which camera it shows, but yeah, and they take me quite a bit of time because I make them take time. I find if I'm done quickly, I can't make it into something that where I'm like, okay, get it done. Okay, get it done. Okay, get it done. Because then it's more like a task. Yeah. So this one probably only took me about 4 or 5 months, and that's sitting it down often. This one, I started in 2019 and finished at like halfway through 2020. But there was so much fill on the blue that I went like blue blind. I was like, oh my God. I like when I'm following like all the designs. And so basically what I do is I'm printing out a picture, I'm drawing a picture, and then I bead over top of that. Right. So underneath here, there's paper. So I like following the different intricate patterns. And right now I'm working on like a really big Celtic salmon piece that will go on the wall. Cool. So I'm moving out of like jewelry and more into like, this is going to take me 3 years. Right. Because that's just good for my mind. So that is what I really like to do, like in my downtime.
That's a really unique hobby. I really like that.
Well, I'm glad to hear it.
Well, that's my last question for YouTube itself. Thanks for answering all those questions and giving me that your time. I'm going to move you over to my Patreons, but for everybody else, I'll leave all the links that you can find April down below. So definitely go give her some love because she's got a lot of good information and a good personality.
Thank you. Bye.
And that was my conversation with April. I want to thank you, April, for coming onto my channel and allowing me to pick your brain and ask you a bunch of questions and just being really raw and honest with me and having a really good conversation. I hope that I can have you on again soon. As for everyone else, as always, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Best of luck, be kind to each other, and may your gods treat you as you've treated others. Bye.